Oh boy, I tell you, I'm going to get some dislikes on this video. So remember, if you like the video, be sure to dislike the video. There we go. So welcome to another vlog. Um, we are going to be talking politically. So if you're not politically inclined and if you're not interested, feel free to skip over this. But recently with vlogs, I've been becoming a little bit more political here on the channel, and for a reason, because we are now in 2020. Here in America, we are about to begin voting for our Democratic candidate and our incumbent Republican candidate, which again is an independent. I would love to see more challengers on the right, but it is what it is. Trump has pretty much taken over the Republican Party, just as at the moment, and you'll never convince me otherwise, Bernie is taking over the Democratic Party. Kind of getting back to its New Deal roots, as it were, because there's been a lot of posers over the years when it comes to being a Democrat. So a lot of people would argue that, oh, well, he's not a real Democrat. Thing is, not a whole lot of Democrats are real Democrats either. To me, Sanders is the closest thing to a true Democrat, the New Deal Democrats that there ever has been. And I'm not talking about the old school Democrats that were actually Republicans back in the day, because for those that don't know, throughout the years, you have seen a total reverse in ideologies when it comes to policies and practices concerning each party. At one point when they first started, Democrats acted more like modern day Republicans, and old school Republicans acted like Democrats. So it's been a whole weird thing with our country, but it is what it is. But with the rise of Sanders, people are going after him. People are going after him because this guy is paving a way of change. He has already changed the party. He is reforming it. And back in the day when he first started, he's been caucusing with Democrats for a long time, although he's a long-time independent. So a lot of people argue, well, how is he a part of the Democratic Party? Why would the Democratic Party want him? On the other side of it, I would argue, why would he want the Democratic Party? Well, truth be told, here in the U.S., third party is pretty much all but impossible to run on, especially when it comes to presidential, federal level, let alone state, maybe local, but yeah, so it's crazy. But again, on both sides, you got two guys coming up, two outsiders, as it were. You've got a billionaire coming in from the right that's coming in to pretty much take over the party, and you've got a dude from pretty much paycheck to paycheck living, as it were, and just grew up in a different era. Lived through Vietnam, went through Iraq, went through just all kinds of stuff. Tons of experience, obviously older in age, but still very mentally sharp. Very mentally sharp. And he's even with his heart attack, this guy is still topping poll numbers, especially after the most recent debate where Warren, for some unknown reason, decided to double down on the whole women can't be president conversation that supposedly happened. And even the sources of that are very questionable because they only had knowledge of the conversation actually happening, not actually hearing what happened. And then, of course, you had the CNN commentator, or the people at the actual debate that were leading everything, kind of put it in one of the shittiest way possible. And the truth is, Warren and Sanders are both fighting for the liberal vote, especially in Iowa. But as of this recording, Iowa is feeling the burn, as it were, and they are pretty much locked into Sanders. But Warren and her camp, in a bit of a desperate move, I would call it, again, just in my opinion, played the sexist card, which honestly, that's a tar pit. You can't get out of the sexist thing. Unless you have a very honest and forthright record, especially political record, public record, of being a very honest dude. And if you ask anybody in Washington, Sanders tends to come up as one of those. Very honest person. They may not like his policies, and they may disagree on that, but him as a person and him as a politician in practice, very honest, and a long history of it. In fact, most recent survey for most trusted senators in the U.S., guess who ranked number one? Oh yeah, homeboy Sanders. Warren, on the other hand, I think she was the seventh least popular candidate, with like, I'm not even sure what her approval rating was. But on the contrary to Sanders' record compared to Warren's when it comes to public accounts of truth, unfortunately, hers is not as exemplary as Sanders. There's a lot of dishonesty there, folks. There really is. And unfortunately, that's going to come back to bite her. In fact, this whole trifle between him and her, it's not a thing he said, she said, okay? It is a misunderstanding, in my opinion. And unfortunately, the Warren camp is taking it to an extreme, trying to take advantage of it, and at the same time smearing Sanders, because the head of CNN has it out for Sanders, because the CNN workers union, one of the unions there, just had a record-breaking I believe it was a $73 million settlement when it comes to the CNN situation. So you can do more research on that. That's just in a nutshell, but it's a whole thing, man. It's a whole thing. Now, with Sanders being the most trusted senator in the U.S., raising $4 million from 100,000 different unique donations within 12 hours of the debate that just happened here in January of 2020, even after he's been labeled as sexist. I think it's fair to say he's going to take Iowa. He's more than likely going to take a few other states after that. He won't win all of them, but he will take a majority of them. And I can see, from my own personal standpoint, with about a 70% flexible chance of being the Democratic nominee. With that said, do not hold your breath that he will not be attempted to be cheated out of that. Because, again, the establishment Democrats are after Bernie because he is a threat to their way of life, to this whole neoliberal standard and the way to run the Democratic Party. Again, Democratic. So that's just some hardcore truth when it comes to it. Now, what about Sanders versus Trump? How do you regulate Sanders versus Trump? Well, there have been reports that even Trump himself is a little threatened by Sanders. Not by most of the other ones, and especially not by Biden, okay? Biden is Hillary 2.0, all right? We all know how that went. She did win the popular vote, but at the same time, she didn't get elected. So, how do you have two of the guys changing both parties coming in and potentially going head-to-head? Both about the same age, so you can't make an age argument. Both with a very dedicated base. Although I would argue Sanders is a lot bigger than Trump's base, in my opinion. Numbers-wise, that could be correct or incorrect. It could go either way. But they both got a good amount of independent votes on both sides back in 2016. So how does that play out? What do you have there? What do you have? You have essentially, much like Sanders versus Biden when it comes to progressive versus neoliberal, two different ends of the spectrum. You've got the same thing when it comes to Sanders and Trump, because you've got a guy that made tons of money when he hadn't even been born yet. He was given like a $200,000 allowance every month or something. So you've got this guy that comes from money. You've got this guy that comes from a very privileged background up against a guy that was raised in a paycheck-to-paycheck family. Half his family was wiped out during the Holocaust. And so you've got some crazy things going on each side. And again, that are on opposite sides of the spectrum. There's really not a lot that, in my view, Trump can come after Bernie on. that already hasn't been disproven as false. He will manipulate it because Trump is damn good at that. The only thing, in my view, that he really has is the whole socialism thing. That could be a bit of a power card because, unfortunately, when it comes to the socialism front, current generations are awakening to red baiting when it comes to socialism, and they're realizing that we even have socialism in modern day America. I did a whole video on that. I'm not going to go into it here, but we do have socialism in America, even though we are a capitalist country. We're a mixed economy, so we have both in practice. Medicare, Social Security, military, whatever. Socialism in practice. But that's really all Trump has. Aside from the last 4 years, and honestly, if it came down to it, and I'll admittingly, I'm obviously a very staunch supporter of Sanders. But if I step away from that and I look at things, it'll be a hell of a battle between these two. But I see Sanders winning out. And as a supporter, I do ask myself, when it comes to Sanders, why do I support him? There are obviously a few things I don't agree on with him. I can't necessarily say I agree with prisoners being able to vote. They are obviously human beings, and they are Americans still, even if they committed a crime. I would probably argue it depends on the crime and the severity, honestly. But at the same time, I think that's a bit of an icy slope because wardens and security guards tend to have power over prisoners. So you could get a lot of voter manipulation in there. And obviously we are a very jailed country. I mean, we have a very high percentage of compared to most countries. So if you open up that door into those folks being manipulated or blackmailed in certain ways and to vote a certain way, that could work in one party's favor. And there's a couple other things. But when it comes to Sanders, I mean, obviously age does feel to be a little bit of an issue because he is older. He's a powerhouse though. He's still going. He's very strong, always active, always going. So he's always going to rallies. He's honestly, a lot of people argue Trump loves his rallies and he's always going to them. He's always very active. Sanders is the same way, if not more, because this dude has been doing it for 6 years already, and he's been doing it longer than that when it comes to like his Senate seat and his Congress seat. So there's a lot going on there. But when it comes to his age and a few other things, why do I support him? Honestly, it's a bit of the same reasoning that some Trump supporters had when they voted him in. It's about sending a message. They didn't want Clinton, okay? They didn't really want to vote for Trump. Some of them probably did, but others are just like, well, I sure as hell don't like Clinton. And I know Trump is, I watch his shows. That's name recognition. I know that he's funny. I know that he knows how to play to a crowd. So I'll give it a shot. I'll vote for Trump. Now, how many will re-vote for him in 2020? Depends. But if you put somebody like Sanders up on the stage next to him, public persona of Sanders is actually, in my opinion, I don't have any facts to back this up, but again, I say as a supporter, a lot more favorable to Sanders than it is on public opinion of Trump. So it would definitely be interesting. So it's going to be crazy going into 2020. Again, all of this is personal opinion, some backed up by facts, others backed up by hearsay. But it's going to be crazy. And I would definitely, again, suggest do some research. Don't vote how you're told. And, vote with your heart. Vote where you want. But just remember, the socialist label is just a label. We as Americans utilize socialism pretty much every day, depending on our status in life. So there are millions upon millions of Americans that benefit from it. So, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. See ya.